A nation that was once written off as a post-colonial afterthought, dismissed by economists and overlooked by investors, somehow transforms itself into an economic powerhouse that makes developed nations jealous. Malaysia didn't just succeed against the odds. It created a development blueprint so brilliant that 10 different countries tried to photocopy it, hoping to replicate the magic. But here's the twist that nobody saw coming. Every single one of them stumbled, struggled, or outright failed. What Malaysia made look effortless turned out to be extraordinarily difficult to duplicate, and the reasons why reveal something profound about what makes this Southeast Asian nation truly exceptional. The Malaysia model isn't just about economics. It's a delicate symphony of factors that somehow work in perfect harmony. When Malaysia launched its transformation in the 1980s and 90s, it combined export-oriented industrialization with ethnic harmony policies, mixed heavy infrastructure investment with careful financial management, and balanced rapid modernization with cultural preservation. The country attracted massive foreign investment by offering political stability, educated workers, and strategic location, all while managing the incredibly complex task of keeping its diverse population, Malays, Chinese, Indians, and indigenous groups, moving forward together. It's like watching a master chef create a perfect dish. The recipe looks simple on paper, but the execution requires skills that can't be easily taught. Nigeria looked at Malaysia in the 1990s and saw a mirror image. Both were former British colonies, both had oil wealth, both had diverse populations. Nigerian leaders made high-profile visits to Kuala Lumpur, took copious notes, and launched the Look East policy to emulate Malaysia's success. They envisioned transforming Lagos into the next Kuala Lumpur, building infrastructure and industrial zones that rivaled Putrajaya and Cyberjaya. But while Malaysia used its oil revenue to diversify into manufacturing, technology, and palm oil, Nigeria's wealth disappeared into corruption and mismanagement. The infrastructure project stalled, the industrial parks remained empty, and the promised transformation never materialized. Malaysia had something Nigeria couldn't copy: institutional discipline and a genuine commitment to long-term planning over short-term gains. Pakistan watched Malaysia's rise with particular interest because both nations were born around the same time, and both were Muslim-majority countries navigating post-colonial identity. In the 1960s, Pakistan actually had a higher GDP per capita than Malaysia, and Pakistani planners were confident they could outpace their Southeast Asian counterpart. They studied Malaysia's export zones, its investment incentives, and its industrialization strategy. But Pakistan's attempt to replicate these policies collapsed under the weight of political instability, military coups, and inconsistent economic direction. Every few years, a new government would tear up the previous administration's development plan and start from scratch. Malaysia, meanwhile, maintained policy continuity across decades, allowing projects to mature and investments to bear fruit, a luxury Pakistan's turbulent politics never permitted. Ghana represents perhaps the most poignant example of Malaysia envy in action. When both countries gained independence in 1957, Ghana was actually wealthier and more developed, with better infrastructure and higher literacy rates. Ghanaian leaders in the 2000s created explicit Malaysia plans to catch up with their former peer, focusing on industrialization and technology. They built special economic zones modeled on Penang's success and courted the same multinational corporations that had powered Malaysia's growth. Yet Ghana's efforts foundered on unreliable electricity supply, inadequate transport networks, and a persistent curse of depending too heavily on raw commodity exports. Malaysia had invested relentlessly in vocational training and technical education, creating a workforce that could handle advanced manufacturing. Ghana's education system couldn't produce engineers and technicians fast enough to meet industrial demands. The Philippines attempted to copy Malaysia's success in attracting electronics manufacturing, particularly in semiconductors and components. Both countries started from similar positions in the 1970s, but Malaysia's Penang eventually became a global hub while the Philippines struggled to achieve the same scale. Filipino planners created industrial parks, offered tax incentives, and marketed their English-speaking workforce. However, inadequate infrastructure outside Manila, unreliable power supply, and policy inconsistencies scared away the long-term investments that had flocked to Malaysia. What the Philippines discovered was that Malaysia's success wasn't just about incentives. It was about the unglamorous work of maintaining roads, ensuring 24/7 electricity, and creating regulatory stability that let businesses plan decades ahead. Sri Lanka looked enviously at how Malaysia managed ethnic diversity while achieving economic growth, seeing parallels in their own multi-ethnic society. Sri Lankan technocrats studied Malaysia's new economic policy and attempted to create their own version of inclusive growth. But where Malaysia carefully balanced growth with equity and managed to keep ethnic tensions mostly peaceful, Sri Lanka's efforts were derailed by decades of civil war. The same diversity that Malaysia turned into a strength, showcasing how different communities could prosper together, became a source of devastating conflict in Sri Lanka. Malaysia's secret weapon wasn't just policy. It was a painstaking work of building trust and creating systems where every community felt they had a stake in national success. Indonesia, Malaysia's closest neighbor and cultural cousin, watched with mixed feelings as its smaller neighbor surged ahead in manufacturing and technology. Indonesia had everything Malaysia had: natural resources, strategic location, young population, plus a much larger market. Indonesian leaders launched Indonesia 2020 and other development plans explicitly modeled on Malaysia's approach. Yet bureaucratic red tape, corruption, and lack of coordination between provinces undermined these efforts. Malaysia's centralized planning and efficient civil service could implement policies quickly and uniformly across the country. Indonesia's sprawling archipelago and complex provincial politics meant that even good policies got lost in implementation, bogged down by local interests and administrative chaos. Bangladesh observed Malaysia's transformation of palm oil into a major industry and tried to replicate it with jute and textiles. Both countries were agricultural economies trying to industrialize, but Malaysia's approach to upgrading from raw materials to processed goods proved nearly impossible to copy. Malaysia didn't just grow palm oil. It developed the entire value chain, from plantation management to oleochemical processing to biodiesel production. Malaysian universities produced the agronomists, the engineers, and the researchers who kept pushing the industry forward. Bangladesh's attempts remained stuck at lower value-added stages because the ecosystem of research, training, and industrial linkages that Malaysia built over decades simply couldn't be rushed or shortcuts found. What these 10 countries discovered is that Malaysia's success wasn't built on any single policy or advantage. It was a result of getting 100 different things right simultaneously, and then sustaining that excellence for decades. The Malaysian formula required visionary leadership, yes, but also boring competence in public administration, unglamorous investments in education and training, patient capital that thought in decades rather than quarters, and perhaps most critically, the social cohesion that kept different communities working together towards shared goals even when tensions arose. You can't photocopy institutional culture. You can't shortcut the trust building that takes generations. And you can't fake the disciplined execution that turns plans on paper into gleaming infrastructure and thriving industries. Malaysia may look easy, but as these 10 nations learned the hard way, what Malaysia achieved was extraordinarily rare and genuinely exceptional. This is a new channel dedicated to uncovering the remarkable stories that make Malaysia truly special, and your support helps us dive deeper into the fascinating journeys, innovations, and hidden triumphs of this incredible nation. If the story of Malaysia's unique success opened your eyes to something new, hit that like button, subscribe to join our community of Malaysia enthusiasts, and drop a comment sharing which aspect of Malaysia's development surprised you most. Let's continue celebrating what makes Malaysia a country that's not just successful, but virtually impossible to replicate.